Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Hasselblad and Cambo. Let me just introduce myself. I'm Steve Goldsmith with Hasselblad. Joining me today is Anthony Wallen from Cambo USA.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
We'll start with go ahead with this PowerPoint. So you should see our introduction now. Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about Cambo? And thanks for joining us again today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, Cambo was founded in the Netherlands in 1946, and they have the distinction of being the first company to make an all-metal large format camera. They have about a 2,000 square foot facility now, and they still produce high-end view cameras like the Actus here behind me and the WRS system. They also make studio stands, video pedestals, booms, dollies, and tracks, and a host of different items in the camera industry.
Awesome. Thanks for that brief history of Cambo. Just to give our viewers a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at today. So our agenda for today will be, we'll look at the Cambo Wide RS platform. We'll then take a look at the Cambo Actus mini view camera. We'll look at our 907X50C from Hasselblad, as well as our X1D II 50C from Hasselblad. A couple of the topics we'll get into will be shift and tilt and swing, rise and fall, and then we will go through some images that Anthony has put together showing some of the things you can do with their products and our digital cameras, and then we'll have some time hopefully at the end for Q&A. But as the webinar goes along, feel free to type in your questions online, and I will try and get them answered for you as quickly as we can. We'll try and get them all answered. So with that, Anthony, let's introduce the Wide RS system.
The Wide RS is a technical camera that we have here on our little stand. This is basically the 1600 model, and the basic idea behind it is that it's a modular system that has the ability for rise and fall. With these geared knobs here on the top and on the side, you can shift the sensor of the camera around inside the image circle. And how this is compatible with Hasselblad is that picture there that Steve has on the screen shows the different directions that the camera can shift in. But on the back of the camera, you have these removable plates that are made for many different types of camera bodies. This particular one here is called the SLW80. The Actus system is a view camera that allows you to mount your camera to the rear and have a lens panel in the front of the panel. And then it allows you with the front standard to tilt the front and also swing the front. And then on the rear standard, you can shift the rear standard. So it blends the technology of the basic old school view camera with today's digital technology and allows you to marry the two together and give you beautiful control and versatility with composing your shots.
Very cool. And the camera systems from Hasselblad we're going to look at today are going to be the 907X50C, which is our 907X body, and a CFV 250C digital back, 50 megapixel system there. And then we'll also be looking at our X1D II 50C, which is again a 50 megapixel medium format camera system. The two systems use the same same sensor, so image quality out of the two is the same. And we'll go into each platform in a little bit. Topics we'll talk about today a little bit will be shift. And we can look at these images here I have up on screen where if we tilt the camera up, we start to get converging lines in the building. So the use of shift will allow us to bring those converging lines back down and level the camera out. Shift can also be used to do stitching both horizontally and vertically, as seen in these images here, these sample images, as well as in this horizontal stitch, 3-image stitch of the sculpture part. We're also going to discuss swing, and swing allows us to control our depth of field or our focus point. So as you can see in this top image here, with no lens swing, we've got some sharpness in the background, but the foreground is out of focus. When we swing the lens a few degrees, the second image shows us that we've got pretty good sharpness from the foreground and the background. And then if we swing the lens to the other direction, we have the ability to create shallow depth of field. So the controls of these cameras are what we're going to discuss a little bit today, and we'll get into that at this moment. So Anthony, let's go ahead and take a look at, first we'll look at the WRS system a little bit in depth. I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint right now, give us a bigger screen, and I'm just going to briefly show you guys some settings on the camera that need to be made before we move forward. So this is our CF-V2 digital back on that we're going to be working with today. And what we need to do is we need to go in and tell the digital back what kind of camera we're connecting to. So we go right here to the camera body settings. Tap the camera body settings, and we're going to look at the wide RS, and it's going to be using a lens with a shutter in it. So we're going to scroll to the flash sync setting for the camera, telling the camera that we're going to control its exposure by the flash input terminal on the bottom of the digital back. So we just select that, and now we've got the digital back waiting for a signal to come in via the flash input terminal on the bottom of the camera. So Anthony, without any further ado, I'll let you go ahead and pull up the wide RS system, and we can certainly start talking about that.
Okay, so we've got the WRS 1600 here. This camera has about 20 degrees of movement. You can see the degree markers here. This is shift right and left, and if you look on this side here, it has the degree markers of how much rise and fall you can have with the camera. So let's build it for the Hasselblad back. So we have our SLW80, and basically that slips into the bottom of the WRS 1600, and these two little latches lock that into place, so that's locked and it can't move. Then with you're going to remove your 907 from the front, and then this simply goes and slips right into the back and clicks into place. So now you have your back mounted to the camera. And today for our demonstration, we have a Roden stock 40mm lens that we're going to put into the front. We put the bottom element in first. These two little latches here lock the top into place. So now you've got your 40mm lens mounted in front of your CF-V50. And then to make it work, flash sync, how Steve mentioned, you have to plug the sync cable into the sync port on the bottom of this CF-V50. So we're going to plug that into the sync port like that. There we go. Now that we've got that plugged in, turn this around to the lens side. And we're going to plug it into the sync port on the lens. The last part that we do is put our little So now that this is all connected and ready to go, and you've switched your camera into flash sync, you would open your shutter. You can see the shutter opening and closing. Let's open up our aperture a little bit so you can see it open in there. There we go. And basically you would open your shutter while you do your focusing. You would cock your shutter and close it down. And then you would release it. And you see it open and close there for whatever duration you put your shutter on. And it would basically expose the sensor on your CF-V50 II. You're muted. I can't hear.
Sorry about that. So Anthony, I was mentioning that for composition purposes and focus checking, we can open up the leaf shutter in that lens and activate the live view on the camera, correct?
That is correct. Simply opening the shutter here, you can see it opening and closing if you look right there in the middle. And then when you're in live view, you would double click on the back of your body here and zoom into 50%. I believe you can actually zoom into 100% on the back of this. And if I'm not mistaken, there's some external software that you can also use to assist with this and have a larger format to view that on.
Yeah, we can activate the Wi-Fi on the digital back and connect up to an iPad Pro and then launch our Focus Mobile 2 application, which gives you full camera control as well as a live composition. So you would activate live view on the application and you'd now have a 10 or an 11 or a 12-inch viewfinder per se in the field with you. And focus peaking works with the application, as does the double tap to zoom into 100%. So in addition to having a 3.2-inch screen on the back of the CFV2, you also have the iPad that you can use in the field as an additional viewfinder. So real handy to have for composition and focus checking and framing in the field.
So one of the main highlights of this using a particular type of body, a tech camera, is that you can move the sensor around inside your image circle. That's why they're used to shoot things like buildings, so you don't get the converging lines. Normally, when you tilt the camera up to the building, you'll get those converging lines and the building looks, like it gets smaller as it goes away. Well, with this one, you would basically take and raise or lower your sensor inside the image circle after you line your body up with the building that you're shooting perfectly parallel, and then you would shoot the building, rise it up, and then shoot the top of the building, and you'd have those perfectly parallel lines going straight up, and the building would have exactly the perspective that you want your clients to see when they're looking at your work. One of the other amazing things about using a system like this is this particular lens here has a tilt and shift on it. So if you need, tilt and swing on it. So if you need to swing your focus plane, you can also do that with this type of lens as well. Now, one of the things that Cambo just introduced last year was the WRS-HVSA. Now, what this allows you to do, it allows you to mount your Hasselblad legacy lenses onto the WRS system. So instead of putting your lens directly on the system as we did with that Rodenstock lens, we put the WRS-HVSA in place there on your body. Then you would take your Hasselblad V-series lens, put it into the adapter, and once again you take your sync cable and plug it into your lens, and then you take the here and plug it in.
Anthony, this adapter will let us have our legacy customers use any of the glass from the V-series system. Is that correct? There's pretty much no limitation on that?
No limitation at all. What pre-existing Hasselblad glass you have at home in the V-series will mount to this adapter. And then the awesome thing about this is it is a shutter activator. Instead of plugging it into the side of the Rodenstock, we've now plugged it in to the side of the adapter. It has these two little levers on top that allow you to cock the lens. And when you cock it there, you see the shutter opening. So it's closed now. You're cocking it. It opens the shutter. At this point, you'd be able to do your focusing and everything like that as we did with the Rodenstock lens on. And then whatever time you put your shutter to on the lens, when you press it the first time, it closes the shutter down, which you see there. And when you press it the second time, it opens your shutter for whatever amount of time you set. So this awesome thing
Anthony,
right here allows you.
We have a couple questions. Let me just bring those up now so we can
Okay.
answer a couple of those. One from Steven is asking if the image on the screen is unreversed and is right side up. And yes, it is, because it's an actual electronic image being created by the sensor that you're seeing in the live view, unlike a reflex body like your 500 series where left is right and right is left. So yes, it is an actual live image off the sensor. So the screen is right side up and not reversed. And another question is the system using the entire sensor? And the answer to that, yes, is the lenses we're putting on here are all designed for, our lenses were designed for 6x6, and the large format lenses we talked about are designed for even larger. So yes, we're making full use of the sensor now. As we move the digital back up and down, we may get to the limits of the sensor. Is that correct, Anthony?
Yes, each different lens projects a different image circle. So depending on which lens you have, some may have a 70mm image circle, some may have a 90mm image circle. These things you can look up online to figure out how big is the image circle of the lens that you're using. And then depending on the size of the sensor you're using, that will tell you how far you can shift inside of that image circle before you hit the edge. Thank goodness someone already worked out the math, because obviously I'm an artist and I am not a mathematician. So this stuff is easily found online for whichever lens you have. You can look that up and find out what the image circle is. And they actually have a lot of simulators and calculators out there where it has your particular image sensor inside the particular circle of the sensor. And you can see exactly how far you can move around inside that image to create whatever type of creative image you're going for.
So Anthony, we got another question from Mark. He's asking, he says the WRS-HVSA adapter looks thicker than a 500 series body. Does it allow for infinity focus? And looking at it, it looks to be about the same depth. I'm certain that they're probably made it to be the same depth as the mirror box to allow us to have infinity focus, but can you confirm that?
Yes, definitely. The sensor is the adapter is definitely machined to give you the distance between the sensor and the lens so that you can focus at infinity. Definitely perfected that. Their factory in Campen is the machines, the computers that run these machines. They're very technical and able to get it exactly to the size and distance so that you can focus at infinity.
Very cool. And then Anthony, can you show the geared mechanism for adjusting the rear plate on there? That we do have geared drives, so we have very precise movements and we can replicate those using the scales.
Yes, so this one here, actually let me turn on so you can see the scale is on this side. And you'll see a little white line right in there. And as you turn the gear, you see the exact amount of movement. So right now, here is 0, and raising it up. And it has indentations. So as you go every 5mm, you feel that you're falling right there into the groove. So it's very easy to repeat these movements when you're doing shots. And then the same is true with the top, which is going to, let me put it down a little bit more so you can see how it moves the sensor, shifts it horizontally. And you can see it back to 0 there. And they're very fine tuned. And it's these cameras are so well made, the weight of your camera will not determine if this is dragging up or down. These things are machined to counterbalance your digital back that you're using. So as you turn and you stop, it stops exactly where you want it to stop. It actually stops it a little bit better than the focus on this little camera that I'm using here.
Anthony, we have a couple more questions. Let me get these in here. Mark is asking if the digital back has an electronic shutter, and yes, it does. It has a electronic shutter that will go from 1/10,000th of a second down to an hour and 8 minutes. And yes, you could use the electronic shutter and leave the lens open if you should want. You could also use lenses that don't have shutters in them. The only downside to that would be that when you're using an electronic shutter, you do have a short readout time between the top of the sensor and the bottom. So anything that's moving rapidly, you can have an issue with some blur there. But yes, you would go ahead and set the camera body, as I'm showing you now, to any or electronic shutter. And now we have any shutter speed we want from a 10,000th down to an hour and 8 minutes with the digital back. So you do have that option if you should want to go that route as well on that. So both options. So
Yeah, the amount of control that you have using the CFV2 is endless. Mixed with the movements of the camera, using the electronic shutter or flash sync, it's amazing what you can do with a camera of this nature. You can you have an input and an output sync on this body. So you could run a sync cable out to your flash system, your strobe system. And if you're doing interior photography and you're doing several different shots together that you're melting together to blending together to make a beautiful interior shot with the straight lines and perfect and everything in the room, light some here, marry those together in post-production. And, the possibilities are truly endless with this type of a system.
just to tag on to what Anthony was just saying, excuse me, if we do have the electronic shutter activated, then we do not have flash sync. So if you want to do
Correct.
flash exposure with the system, you'll have to use a lens that has a shutter in it, be it a large format lens that we showed you, like the Rodenstock, or one of the Hasselblad V-series lenses, in order to have the ability to use flash sync in that scenario. Again, electronic shutter can be used, but there is no flash synchronization with that. So hopefully you've gotten a taste of what the WRS system can do. We also have another camera that we want to go through today, and there's been a lot of questions about that. So let's go ahead and take a peek, Anthony, if we can, at the Actus platform, which is again a very versatile system that can support both our CFV250C digital back as well as our X1D 250C. Someone asked if you could use other camera platforms with the Actus, and yes, it does support a variety of full frame DSLRs as well as other cameras. There are different mountings for that, and you certainly can use a whole variety of different cameras. And if you go to the Cambo website, there are some configuration tools you can look at, as well as some PDF documents that will allow you to see what different components you would need. But today we'll be talking really just about the uses of the Cambo systems integrated with our Hasselblad systems. So I'll hand it back over to Anthony, and we can take a look at the base system for the Cambo Actus.
So what we have here is the Cambo Actus system that is bare without anything extra on it. And what we will do, first we're going to use it with the CFV50. So you would use this adapter here, which is the ACDB989. And how this works is it just plugs right into the top of the rear standard. Oops, when you have it turned in the right direction. Plugs in right there. And then with this little latch on the inside here, you lock it into place. Once you get that locked into place, it's not going anywhere. And then with the same SLW80 that we use to mount the digital back onto the WRS system, you're going to use that same plate attached to your CFV50, and then you're going to slide it into the bottom, just as we did on the other body, and bring these two latches down here on the top. And now you've got your CFV50 locked into the rear standard of the Actus system. Now the next thing we'll do is build the front. So we have our front standard. I'm just going to move the rear standard just a little bit further away so you can kind of see what's going on inside here. And we have the ACB-HA. this adapter here allows you to mount Hasselblad V-series lenses onto the front of the Actus. But what's different about this versus the HVSA is that it does not have the shutter activator in it. So when you're using this type of adapter, sorry, get this, you would have to use your electronic shutter because you would not have the ability to activate the shutter inside the lens. So now that you've got your lens mounted and your rear stander together, Cambo has these leather bellows that have a square magnet that attaches to your rear stander and a nice circle that goes around and clips in via magnet to the front stander. You just pull that back there.
I'm going to answer a question while we're having you assemble that. Johannes is asking if color cast can be expected when using CF and C lenses in a shifted position. And anytime you're moving the lens off of the plane, you can have some color shift, but our focus software has a scene calibration mode where you can take an opaque image and then apply that as a correction for any color cast. It's a very simple process to do within our focus software. So if there is any color cast created, you can eliminate that with the scene calibration tool in our focus software.
So now here we have the fully assembled Actus. And as we can see, this top knob here is going to control your swing, which you can see marked here and tells you exactly how much swing you're having. So if I turn this here, you can see that the front of the body, the lens, is actually twisting right and left, or rather swinging left and right. And what that does is it takes your focal plane and it twists it, like in that example that Steve showed us earlier, where it had the things on the wall and the one in the rear, which was further away, was out of focus or soft. Swinging your focal plane will allow you to move and bring those things into focus. The next knob here on the side of the Actus is your tilt. And now this will tilt up or down that focus plane and allow you to also, once again, move your focus plane and get it to exactly what you want to focus on. One of the most amazing things about a view camera system, those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, and SLR cameras were what we started off with. So whenever we saw something with bellows, we think of, oh, that's like old school. I never learned anything about the benefit of having a view camera. And when I began to work with Cambo and got deeper and deeper into this technology, it was like, oh my goodness, it's like mind blown what a view camera allows you to do with your photography. It basically allows you to turn any lens, almost any lens, into a macro lens just by extending your bellows and moving it further away from your lens. It allows you to bring whatever you're focusing on closer. And the possibilities are endless in what you can do with your photography. Being able to shift your focus from vertical and lay it down so that the front of your image and the back, the top and the rear of your image are now focused because you've introduced tilt into a shot. Your DSLR, to tilt, you have to tilt the whole camera down. But that changes exactly what your the view of the image you're looking at. But with a system like this, you can keep the angle of view exactly how you imagined it, but just slightly shift or slightly swing or slightly tilt. And this system is also, there's much more benefit to using a view camera over using a tilt shift lens. With the tilt shift lens, you would be able to tilt or shift in one shot. But with the use of a view camera, I can swing it this way, I can tilt it this way, And then I can shift my rear as well. Actually, I didn't get to the knobs back here on the back. This knob back here controls their horizontal shift of the sensor. So now spinning this knob to the right or left allows you to move your sensor horizontally inside your image circle, just like you did with the wide RS camera. And this last knob here allows you to fine tune the focus by moving the rear standard closer or further away from your lens.
Anthony, we've got a question from one of our viewers asking if he can use the WRS-HVSA adapter on the Actus DB2. And while I know the answer to the question is no, you can't use the WRS-HVSA, we do have something else you can use. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. And that was a great question. And when this opportunity came up to do this presentation with Hasselblad, the people over at Cambo said, oh, hey, guess what? We're going to put something in the mail to you, and it just arrived Monday. And it was this little guy here, the ACB HVSA. This is a brand new piece that is from Cambo. So basically what it is the same HVSA WRS panel, but it's geared and machined to work in the Actus. So now we can take the same Hasselblad legacy lens and mount it to, make sure I'm getting this in correctly.
So now again, with this adapter, just like the previous HVSA adapter, we have the ability to use the shutter in the lenses again, though, so we can go back and use the flash sync on the digital back, so we can use flash with this situation again, as opposed to using the electronic shutter. And now we're making use of whatever shutter speeds the lens itself has built into it. So again, supporting our legacy customers with those that had initially purchased lenses for the 500 series cameras, we now have that functionality brought back with the Cambo Actus system and the new HVSA adapter.
Yes.
So Anthony's plugging in the flash sync cable it'll go from the sync port on the lens to the sync in on the digital back, and the sync will be triggered by the cable release Anthony will plug in. Again, it's a dual function cocking mechanism where you'll have the open shutter first and then close the shutter for the exposure. So you can have the same live view functionality you had on the wide RS system on the Actus system. And no, there is not an adapter for, question from John is there, can you use H lenses with the adapter? And unfortunately, H lenses are electronically controlled. It's not a mechanical shutter. So no, this doesn't support the use of H lenses, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this one will operate the same as it did with the wide RS system. The cocking, which opens the shutter there, the leaf shutter inside there. It's the first time you hit the plunger, that closes the shutter down, and the second time you hit it, it opens it up for the duration that you set your flash. So that is basically how the Actus system works seamlessly with the CFV2. Now,
Anthony, we've got a quick question before we move on.
Yeah.
Is can we orientate the sensor vertically on the Actus system? So if you want to show how that would be done, that'd be great.
Yes. So using the SLW80, which is the rear plate that your CFV is mounted to, right now we just had it mounted horizontally. You would just simply pull it out, turn it to the side, and it is machined so that it can slide right in and then lock. So now you can use it vertically and shoot and stitch pictures together vertically instead of horizontal. So definitely you were not limited to horizontal shooting when using the Actus system. You simply turn it to whichever direction you'd like, and you're able to use it just the same. Now,
Well, I'll let you move on to what you were going to go to now, Anthony. Sorry about that.
so the amazing versatility, if you see over my shoulder here in the back, we have the X1D II hooked up to our Actus system. So what I'm going to do here is just show you, he's got up on the screen there, the AC793, which is the adapter that allows you to mount the X1D II onto your Hasselblad. And this little lever here on the side, when you press it, it allows you to change the orientation of the body once it's mounted to the back of the Actus. So I'm going to switch back over the camera here to the other one. And then
And
I'm going to open.
Anthony, I'm going to answer a question while you're doing that. So Paul asked, no rotation on the back half to expose the sensor out in the field. Some of the WRS cameras do have the ability to rotate the physical body, so you don't have to remove the digital back for that. But with the Actus system, you will need to physically rotate the back from horizontal to vertical. Although Anthony did just show you on the X1D that you can just rotate that without having to dismount it.
Yes, so, and I can show you after we get done with this little demo here, how that looks with the wide RS. So now instead of your bellows having a square attachment that attaches to the digital back, you have a circle attachment that goes onto the rear standard and attaches with the magnet to the X1D II. And then this one pulls over and attaches, I can't see what I'm doing there. There we go, to the lens that you're shooting with. So if
Now,
I wanted to shoot
one thing I need,
vertical, I would raise that lever, which would allow me to change the orientation of the body that I'm shooting.
Anthony, let me just quickly show the settings we need to set on the X1D II for the electronic shutter to use it with the Actus system. So on your X1D II, you would go into the menu and you would go into the exposure icon. And under the exposure icon, you would check electronic shutter. And now the electronic shutter in the body is activated. And again, we have, shutter speeds an hour and 8 minutes up to 10,000 a second with the electronic shutter. So when using the X1D II and the Actus camera system, it is going to be making use of the electronic shutter.
Yeah, so with the use of the electronic shutter and not using the shutter in the lens, it opens you up to a host of different lenses. This one that I just put on here is the Actar 19, the new lens that Cambo introduced last year. So look at that glass there. Beautiful altogether. Now, one thing I did not show you when I was going through all the knobs is this last knob here above the focus knob down here. This one allows you to control the rise and fall of the camera body, digital back, or camera body that you're using in the back. So on the rear, you have rise and fall control, and then you have back here, you have horizontal shift. Also, just want to show if you want to change the orientation like before, you would just simply hit that switch so you can change orientation. And there you have the fully working Actus system for using it with the Hasselblad system, and in this instance, the X1D II. So it really allows you to, I mean, you can even make this wide angle lens here into a macro lens just by increasing the distance that you have your bellows away from the front of the lens. We also manufacture longer rails and longer bellows, so you can pull these two elements even further from each other and bring your images very, very close to the front element.
Anthony, we've got a question from
Sure.
Daryl asking if infinity focus is possible with the Actus and the X1D II mounted to it.
Yes, infinity focus is possible. You're basically, I mean, depending on which lens you use, this one, as you see, the rear element sticks out pretty far. So you can get the two very close to each other, which would allow you to get to your infinity focus. They make several different types of bellows. This one has four. They make one that is simply one bellow that takes out all of the light and space between the two and will prohibit you from getting as close to the lens as possible. So depending on which set of bellows you use, you can definitely get your X1D as close up to the front element as possible so that you can achieve infinity focus, easily achieve.
And then Anthony, James is asking again if you could repeat what lens you currently have mounted in your hand.
This lens here is the Actar 19. This lens was actually made with the Nikon 19 PC tilt shift. Cambo worked together with Nikon and they manufactured this lens using the glass from that Nikon system, and they took the electronics out, put a manual aperture in, and manufactured this lens so that it can be used for their Actus view camera system. So that is
And then
the glass
Anthony,
that we have on here now.
Paul's asking if we ever have to worry about a light leak with the magnetic bellows.
I have never had any type of light leak. I do not believe they manufacture these things so that light leaks do not happen outside in the high noon or anything like that. There is no light. If I can get this a little bit closer to the camera, you'll see that there's actually an indentation here, and as well, there's an indentation here with the front. And when you connect the bellows, the front actually goes over that section there, and the rear one drops into the groove of the rear element, the rear standard. So there's like a little lip that goes over and prohibits any light from getting through. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say we have some sample images that you shot that we can take a look at in a minute. But if you have something else you want to show on the camera body, go ahead.
Yeah, let me show one more thing that I forgot. So that X1D comes off, X1D II rather, and now we're putting the 50C back on, except instead of the ACDB 989, we're using the ACDB 987. Okay, and now when we go back to our square bellows, this adds another element to our photography. On the side here, you can see using this knob, now we can tilt our rear sensor using this attachment on the back. Your SLW80, which is what mounts onto the Hasselblad camera, is the same plate that we mounted into this earlier adapter that we use. Mounts in there just the same way, sliding these down to lock it into place. But now we can introduce a new movement, which is tilting the rear element along with your swing, your tilt, your rise and fall, which is here, your rise and fall, and also your shift, which you can do here. So this modular system, the possibilities are really endless. They've really figured out how to give you all of the elements that were capable with the old school view cameras, and they've incorporated that into the Actus system and added that together with the digital technology and things like that. One of the amazing things about using a system like this is that with the technology that's in the camera, which gives you focus peaking, you can really see where you're focusing as you tilt, as you swing, because your peaking changes on the back of the camera while you're viewing it and gives you precise control and the capability to see exactly what you're swinging to, what you're tilting to, what you're rising or falling, and how the lines line up. The ability to have a digital back with a view camera is, you know, I've had friends that come over and they see me playing with this thing at home and they're like, what is that? And I try to explain it and they still don't get it. And then I turn on the back and they'll see the focus peaking going and they stop and they look at it and then they look at what we're shooting and they're like, I didn't even know that was possible. I mean, these are
like
professional photographers.
yeah.
You can see it like the jaw drops and it's like, I didn't know that was possible. And it's not an old school, I mean, it is an old school camera. And they kind of dumbed it down when they put the sensor and the body together and didn't give you the ability to move it apart or swing or tilt because it just made it easier to use the camera. I mean, shooting with a view camera does take a little bit more time, but it gives you so much more control over what you're shooting. So
It's and today's obviously today's digital backs and cameras with the focus peaking and the live view and all that certainly have made it a simpler operation than it was back in the day when we were using ground glass and we were having to use, you know, Polaroids for focus check and things like that. So it really has converged the technology of the view camera into the modern world. Cambo's done an excellent job, and I just love the size of the Actus. It's just, you know, when you compare it to like the Ultima, you know, it's just such a nice, small, portable system to take with you. And we've got some images that you shot, Anthony. You talked earlier about macro work. So tell us about Jimmy.
Well, I'm a huge Hendrix fan. Actually, my son is named Hendrix. And when I got the, actually, I was using the X1D. I got it and took it home over the weekend. I was like, I got to, you know, show some kind of example of, you know, because people don't really understand why you would tilt or why you would swing. And so this was a shot that I did using the X1D II. And I have a old Hasselblad 501C and have a 150 millimeter lens at home. So I put that on the front of the Actus there. And you can see here that I have the back is lowered and that the lens, the front standard is tilted. It looks like it's tilted like 4 degrees. And from the looks of the rear sensor, it looks like it's like 13.5 degrees that I have it lowered. And what that did was, if you go back to the image of Jimmy, actually the second one, just back one, that's the, yeah. So you'll see that his guitar is actually maybe like a half an inch or so, an inch in front of his face. So the having his face and the guitar strings in focus at the same time, normally I would have to use a F11 or, you know, something to get that much in focus when you're at macro. But, you know, the further you get in the aperture, the closer diffraction and things like that come in. But what I did by tilting it, and if you go back one more to the actual picture of Jimmy, the close-up one there, the macro shot there, I was able to have the guitar strings in focus and tilt it back so that the front of the top rather of the sensor like laid right on his face and his nose there. So the plane of focus is actually on a diagonal and it lays right and gets his face in focus and it gets the strings in focus. So that was not a macro lens, that was a 150 millimeter lens that I basically just pulled it. You see how far it is away from the bellows there, I mean from the front element. This one here is another not supposed to happen shot, which is I have the X1D II out in the field and I was using a 50 millimeter lens. Actually, the one that I was using, oh no, actually, I'm sorry, this is a 60 millimeter lens. I forgot which one it was. A 60 millimeter lens. It's not a macro lens, but I have it, let's say 4 inches from that acorn there. And I was able to turn that 60 millimeter lens into a wide angle macro. So using the bellow extension just gives you a freedom that you don't have. Almost like, oh, I have to buy a macro glass to do that. No, I already have a 60 millimeter lens and I'll just increase the distance in the bellows and now I have a macro lens. So, you know, it gives you so much creative control over what you're doing. I think we have one more
We
image.
also-
Oh, no, we have a couple of image perspective. So this was using the wide RS with the 50, the CFV2, and just shifting the camera angle vertically inside the image circle to capture this building. And if you notice, the telephone poles and everything are straight. This one here as well. You know, I did not have to tilt it up to get the top of the building in shot. It was just raising, or actually making the image fall, so that I could rise up in the image circle and capture the total building. And the lines are straight. You'll see the street pole that's on the side there is straight. All the trees and elements are straight. Same thing here. This one kind of looks like it's skewed and it's funky, but that building just has some funky angles. But if you look at the street poles and everything that's on the ground, all the other lines are perfectly straight. And having this whole building in one shot without tilting up and making the lines converge.
So we talked about perspective control. We talked about macro work. We also mentioned you can use the system for stitching. So this is a stitch you did. I think it's 2 or 3 images, right, Anthony?
It's actually, in theory, it was supposed to be 3, but I did not shift as far to either side as I would like, because I was hitting the edge of the image circle. So I took 3 shots. I took a center shot. I shifted 11 millimeters to the left and got one side, then shifted back 11 millimeters to the right of center and got the other shot. When I took it into the post-production software and did the stitch, the overlap that I had basically completely covered the center image. So this is actually a 2-shot stitch, but not knowing how it would act in post, it was actually I took 3, but it only used 2 to stitch it together.
So Anthony, we've got a question regarding Cambo USA. It says Cambo USA is located in Atlanta. Can we order directly from them? I'm not sure if you do that, but or if you have, I mean, I know you have dealers as well. So the best way for someone to contact you would be your email address, which is
info@Cambo USA, info at Cambo, CAMBO USA.com. Cambo is a US distributor, and we have dealers that are all over the country. So if you go onto our website, which is just CamboUSA.com, there is a link there for dealers, and you can see if there's a dealer in your area. If you're not sure, you can drop me an email, and I can point you to the dealer that will give you the care and support that you need to get the Cambo products and get you going on this new bit of photography journey for you.
so. Well, we want to hold to our normal time frame, and we do thank you all for joining us. After this webinar, you'll get a follow-up email. That email is going to be a survey about the webinar and what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. But you'll also have an email coming out, and we will include in that email some links to some of the things we talked about today, as well as possibly a PDF attachment you can download. So we do thank you so much for joining us. We thank you, Anthony, for going through and making such a versatile system easy to understand today. I know that there's so many pieces and components put together, and you know, it's so configurable that in an hour, it's really hard to go through everything you can do. So definitely check out the Cambo website. Check out the Hasselblad website. Again, the products we talked about from Cambo today were the wide RS system. We talked about the Actus mini view camera system. We talked about Hasselblad's X1D II 50C mirrorless medium format camera, as well as our 907X camera that uses a CFV2 50C digital back. So a lot of versatile systems to enhance and allow you to be a more creative photographer. And that's what this is really all about. It's allowing us, Hasselblad and Cambo, to allow you to explore all the creative vision you have within. So, you know, Hasselblad's catchphrase is create to inspire, and I know that Cambo goes along with that as well. So we thank you so much for joining Hasselblad and Cambo USA today for this webinar, and we look forward to having you join us again in the future. Anthony, again, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure to be here.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.